Welcome back, everybody, to another wonderful episode of Lotus Tea Talks, where we shed our unique light on current events while blooming conversations and elevating girl talk. I am one of your lovely co-hosts, Amika Ma'at, and I am joined by
Aziza Afi
and Shinya Ani.
Yes, ladies. Now let's sip this tea.
Yes.
All right. So, once again, we are continuing with this happy Women's History Month because it's Women's History Month and it's a great time to be alive. So, you're welcome. And quite frankly, I think we have another great topic. I always think our topics are great, though, because we're great. Mm-hmm. And this one, we're talking about educated women.
We are talking about educated women.
We are getting into the education of the women and what that really means, what that looks like, the different forms of education. But before we get into that, we are going to talk about which petal of life this covers. And I believe it's community, right?
I think we're also still in community.
We're still in community. So what's the buzz? Bzz. Sorry. We're gonna get a sound bite.
I am Chi, and I am here with the buzz. So I put up a few statistics about just women in education. So Black women have been obtaining degrees at a consistently high rate for the last 8 years and counting. Shout out to us. Information collected by the Higher Education among African Americans between 2009 and 2010 show that Black women account for 68% of the associate's degrees, 66% of the bachelor's degrees, and 71% of the master's degrees, and 65% of the doctoral degrees awarded to Black students during that time frame. So that is nice. Okay. And continuing. We be educated. This says there has been a significant increase in rate for four-year college completion among Black Americans, especially women, but rates among whites have increased just as rapidly. So that's interesting. Almost half, 44% of white women ages 25 to 37 in 2005 have completed four-year degrees, and Black men unfortunately have a rate of just under 17%. So
what I hear you saying is women be getting their degrees.
Period. We are educated.
We are educating
ourselves. Yes. I want to just, last but not least, Black women are the most educated subgroup of Americans. And Black women are also starting to outgrow their counterparts in their earnings.
Yes. It is what it is, people.
That's interesting.
It is what it is.
Okay, so
one more. Sorry.
Okay,
finally and lastly, Black women are the fastest growing demographics of entrepreneurs in the U.S. with nearly 2.7 million businesses nationwide. The number of businesses owned by Black women have grown 50% from 2014 to 2019, representing the highest growth rate of any female demographics. Black women account for 42% of all women who open new businesses during that time, and 36% of all Black employers are employed by Black women. So that's nice. Yes.
Wow.
So those are huge statistics.
Our coins.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So what I hear you saying is that Black women, and this term Black women is referring to like American people, right?
I'm assuming, don't quote me, but I'm assuming they're talking about African American women or women, I guess, through the, census would consider themselves Black or African American, African descent.
Okay, yes. Got you.
No
in America.
Rachel Dolezal out there.
Arata.
Please.
Oh gosh. Okay, so that is very interesting, and I also hear you saying that academically, Black women are really raising the statistics in education, doing very well as far as like academically, whether it's your associate's degree, bachelor's, master's, doctoral, you are opening businesses, you are in hiring positions, you are earning, you are raising your earnings, you are standing up for yourself. Ooh, that's great. I like it. And I also find it interesting that they had a statistic about Black women and their counterparts, meaning men, Black men, right? And I find it interesting that they included that statistic, that they even did that study,
Why do you find it interesting?
That's a good question. I find it interesting because, first of all, just always that comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Always that comparison. Also, just putting it out on the table. That a lot of times, especially in conversation, people are like, oh, you know, women don't earn a lot, about wages. There's a lot of conversation about the wages of women. Mm-hmm. And when it gets very specific down to specific to Black women and how their wages are reflecting in their homes. Mm-hmm. Like if you were to say, you know, in a Black home, mm-hmm. right, or a black family, right? It's like interesting to put that on the table because we're already talking about it.
Right.
You know, it's already such a big conversation. And to put the statistics behind it, it's like, well, what does that say? Does that say that our counterparts are supporting us and following these bigger goals, bigger dreams? Mm. Are these women also still, you know, interdependent or, you know, mm-hmm, sharing mm-hmm, some type mm-hmm. of relationship like that? I wonder, you know, because since y'all put that part there, right. that comparison, you might as well just go the whole nine, you know?
Right.
But that's just a thought.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Sure. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
I'm saying it's interesting because, you know, places of higher education, from what I've had in discussions with a lot of Black men, they don't feel comfortable there. Mm. You know what I'm saying? I think that, and this is kind of digressing, but especially like, at least from what I noticed from my HBCU experience, especially like for straight Black men, it can be a hard space to be in because mm-hmm. it's a lot of assimilation that has to happen for them. Yeah. And I wonder, you know, what are also those statistics for like Black men in business and things like that, starting their own businesses? But that just made me think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it's not to say, I do want to make it clear that even in those statistics, it's not to say that, you know, women still don't have disparaging wages, like wages that are, you know,
exactly.
Right.
I think that's
wage
why a lot of
people
are starting their own businesses because of those disparities.
Right. Yeah. Right. Or moving up in the ladder so much because in order for you to get a certain earning, you do have to just like break through that ceiling sometimes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And so I think it's important. We like defining things and, you know, just getting deeper to the nitty gritty of these agreements that we as humans have. Mm-hmm. And understanding the different forms of education that are out there, because of course we have the academic mm-hmm. education, which we are all very much so aware of, which we just got lovely statistics on from our educated women right here.
Okay.
And however, that is not the only form of education mm-hmm. that a woman can receive, let alone a person can mm-hmm. receive. And so I think we were going to really get a nice sense of just holistic education, what that looks like. From my understanding, there, of course, is education of your spirituality. So whatever higher source you believe in, whatever divine practices you decide to identify with, there's definitely that education of understanding the spirit and the place that has within your life. There, of course, is education of your physical body itself.
You know, what are you eating? Yeah. Are you working mm-hmm. out? How do you maintain your physical body, your nutrition, and your fitness?
Right. Like, you don't necessarily have to go to medical school to understand your own physical body. I think that is something that everybody needs to have a very basic concept and understanding of.
Right.
Specifically as women, like, there have been so many misconceptions about what the female body does and does not do. And what is normal and natural and what isn't. And so if you don't do that own personal self-discovery, exactly, and mm-hmm. educate yourself on what it is that your body actually needs, actually is supposed to do, then baby, you're going to be out here looking real lost, confused, and silly, thinking that certain things are okay or are not okay. Mm-hmm. There's social education mm-hmm. and just understanding how to communicate and operate in social environments.
Right.
Our last episode was about interdependence and independence mm-hmm. and how ultimately you're always going to be in some form of interaction with somebody else. And if you don't know how to navigate the worlds of communication ultimately, because I think communication is a big part of social education and understanding how different people communicate ultimately, how you communicate communicate best, and how you can learning and educating yourself on how you can improve your form of communication, then you may become a social pariah or socially awkward, and just understanding like certain people have social anxieties and things of that nature. And so just really understanding social education. What other forms do y'all know of?
Emotional intelligence,
Yes.
Knowing how to which goes into that social, like navigate your emotions. I think, a lot of people don't teach children like how to truly manage your emotions. Because sometimes you still have to be at work. You might be upset, but you still got to get things done. You might, feel a certain way. So just knowing how to, just navigate those emotional intelligence is a big one.
For sure. I would say your creative intelligence as well.
Yes.
Just really understanding the power of being able to think creatively, whether it's for a creative outlet or for actually, structural creation, like how to build something, how to, make something out
Life
of nothing.
Skills,
you
basically.
feel me?
Yeah.
And I mean, creative intelligence, that's a long list.
Right. 'Cause what happened to home economics?
Yeah, like what happened to home economics, just for the basics of like keeping your home clean and being able to, how do you actually stock a fridge? I think it's interesting.
A healthy fridge.
How do you
Yeah.
stock a fridge? How do you balance
those
a
things
checkbook?
were also taught too. Like
or even when we were talking
we don't
about
use checkbooks anymore, but still.
I know.
But financial education.
Right. Financial
literacy.
That's the next one. Financial education as well. I think like even when we were talking about fitness, the education of fitness includes understanding rest. Like being educated on how to rest.
Right.
We support the NAP ministry on this podcast.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that goes into spirituality, because I think a lot of spiritual practices implement or, point out the necessity of just resting, of not the doing, but the resting for the downloads, for all of that.
For sure. I think it's interesting when you talk about statistics, like how many of those women, for example, went through a debutante process?
Right.
How many of those women went through a rites of passage, a culturally, inclusive rites of passage?
Or even just Girl Scouts.
How many went through Girl Scouts of those women?
I think, because you talked about like having strong women relationships, and I think that has taught us so much about having those relationships, all having gone through those type of processes where you're experiencing those things with women. I think it really teaches you that, even like in times where it's not so pretty, we're not all friends, we still have a sisterhood. For sure. Like
I remember one of my earliest memories of like just area where I had to learn something, and it was like really just educational, but it was also just feminine driven. It was very much like women education, okay? Was when we were little, and there was an elder, her name was Mama Iya, and you had Sister Adama, and you had your mom and my mom and a whole bunch of all of these different little spiritual women, not little, but big. Because Mama Iya was like little. Literally like 6 something. She was like amazing. She was really, really tall and amazing. And so we had a sweat lodge experience when we were maybe like 5.
Oh, wow.
And they did like, we were young, maybe like between 5 and 7 somewhere.
We've been about this life.
And they took like African red clay that Mama Iya bought back, that Sister Adama sells now, okay? We'll let y'all know where that's at, maybe. Just kidding, we will. And anyways, in the West End, you can purchase it. But anyways, look up Sister Adama, WRFG, y'all. Okay, anywho. So,
plugs.
They took the red clay. We did red clay mass.
Yes.
We were in there singing women's songs, singing spiritual songs, sweating, doing a cleanse, eating right. It was a whole vibe. And we were mad young. But that's something that really stuck in my brain.
Right.
Like, it's really, really imprinted there. And when you talk about education, it's like that situation helps me when I'm in school and I'm stressed out and I'm getting my master's degree, or I'm, going for that traditional education, and I need to go home and rest. I need to go to a spa and put on a mask. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
get
it
centered,
taught me.
replenish yourself.
Yes. It embedded that intelligence within my system where I can reach for it and utilize it, because intelligence is a tool.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, being West African, one thing that African parents always say, they're like, you need to go back to Africa to get your education. And when they say that, they're not talking about like writing, reading, they're talking about like culture. They're talking about like spirituality, like interreactions, respect, purpose. They're talking about those things, and just being in the village and learning life, going through rites of passage. We curated rites of passages here that kind of emulate those rites of passages that were just embedded in African culture, as far as, coming of age for a woman, and what, and those things that are changing in your body, and respecting your body, and knowing how to, calm your body or elevate yourself. And so I think that, it got me thinking about this topic when they were given those statistics about Black women, because I see in today's society that so many of us lack those other educations. You see so much just everything's just out there. Everything is just on the floor. Like, we often talk to each other about, we don't refer to each other as bitches or hoes or sluts, and just the power in the tongue of your word, of referencing each other, even in a joking, laughing situation, is that, but we're not educated about the power of what you say is what you receive, and the power of, pushing that onto your sister constantly. So just to bring it full circle, it is important to not only have that Western education, but to have a holistic education, 360.
For sure. Like you said, that is, in the Western sense, education is focused on more so academics. And then, of course, they dibble and dabble in other areas depending on the culture that you are more so embedded in the Western culture itself, the subcultures, if you will. And thankfully, we have been raised in a community that has a lot of Afrocentric teachings, African-centered, if you will, teachings. And so, therefore, we have gotten knowledge of self in a certain way. We have learned certain aspects of respecting our elders and the necessities for these rites of passages, and understanding that ultimately every transition in your life is a form of a rites of passage. And to ceremonialize it and to actually bring reverence to that situation and to that moment will allow you to actually grow more from it and learn more from it. So that's in and of itself a form of education, and just learning about self and learning about this new phase in life that you're about to enter into. And so oftentimes there is a correlation of education and independence. And I think that's really important for us as Black people, ultimately, of course, women as well, because education was something that was kept from us coming into this country. We do have some ancestors that were born and are indigenous to this country, but a lot of our ancestors were brought here and were kept from reading and learning how to write and mathematics and things of that nature, because ultimately the slave owners knew that once you got that
those
education,
forms of education,
well, yes, for academic education, but also cultural education was kept from us. A lot of the time,
kept and stripped from
us. Stripped and kept from us. Once it was stripped, they refused to let our people who did still have those. Still had that knowledge, the griots, if you will, they refused to allow them to share that information. And so we still figured out ways to share that information, period, point blank, because we're not going to lose ourselves completely. But ultimately, we, as the masses and as a whole, it was very much so limited. And they knew that having education of self and academic education were going to lead to a form of independence. And that was not something that they wanted at that time, they being the oppressors and colonizers.
fire burn.
So,
right.
No,
so,
but
yeah,
for real,
the
for real.
correlation between education and independence.
See, I was just about to, when you were talking, like my brain totally saw where you were going with this, because at the end of the day, we definitely shout out to all of our ancestors, all of those who came before us, who actually took the time to make sure that their education wasn't lopsided. Because you deserve a full and holistic understanding of what it is to be human, what it is to be present in this society, and even in this universal society, right? And sometimes if people try to pigeonhole you, whether it's only, your master's degree and you don't really need to know anything else about how to be human, whether it's your spirituality or, working out or eating well or anything. People always try to pigeonhole people, right? Or whether it was back in the day when our ancestors were pigeonholed into not being able to read or not being able to write, or pigeonholed into only being at home and only being dependent, right? Being able to have that balance and that opportunity now in this age is really a blessing, because we have the freedom to choose both. We have the freedom to actually be well-rounded, women, well-rounded, well-educated women. Our intelligence levels can really spike because there's so much information and so much knowledge being shared. I also think it's really important to, keep it in, have it designed, take it, make it intentional about your education of yourself and even your family and your friends and your children and people around you. We can all continue to learn. It's one of those good sayings where it's like, sometimes they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but that's not true. Elders will always tell you, I can always learn from the youth. Absolutely. They'll always say it,
Yeah, education is a forever thing.
Yeah, and that's the quote. Education is a forever thing.
I think it's
exactly.
a saying, a wise man will tell you, you never finish learning,
Yes,
stop learning and stop living.
Exactly.
Yes, all of these quotes, all of these things.
We got quotes.
Right, exactly. They're all touching on that aspect of, your intelligence should not be pigeonholed. Allow yourself to have a full experience of what it is to be an intelligent being. To really be in this human form and have the intelligence that we have with, there's a lot to it. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, it's a danger in getting cocky almost when you see these statistics like, oh, we're so educated. We're good. No, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. It's a lot. I'm so proud of us. Shout out to us for being, Westernly educated when that was stripped away from us. But there's so much work to do in our communities to get everybody to another level of education. I think a huge one is food and health and, emotional intelligence, like we've mentioned, that is crippling our community still to this day. So I think that let's not think, okay, well, after college, I got my doctorate degree, I'm good. I know enough. There's so many phases of education. Travel is education. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many different places that once you have one under your belt, don't forget okay, well, maybe I can move into another space and another place. I've personally learned so much these years out of college.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. So
too.
It's very interesting.
It is. And like you're saying, ultimately new experiences will cause you to learn, period. So go out, experience different things, experience in order to, I don't remember.
Experience in order to learn.
To have experiences, and therefore you will grow.
Right.
Yes. And so if you're, like Chichi was saying, I went to college, I got my degree, and if you only stay in that lane and you don't decide to maybe go do study abroad, or if you don't decide to change your career path eventually, you're going to eventually pigeonhole yourself and stifle yourself, and you won't have the opportunity to become this holistic, dynamic being that you truly were made to be.
Yeah.
And so it is seriously dangerous for there to be a lack of education, specifically for us as Black women, because once again, if you don't know who you are and you don't ultimately learn who you are, if you're not really experiencing life and continuing to have these new experiences, then I feel like us being the mothers of creation, which is, you know, the truth.
Right.
How could we dare not continue to
Right,
learn?
exactly.
How dare us not continue to expand and grow and share that information ultimately? Because just because you're not
enemy
an
wants us to
expert,
stop, but we cannot.
They don't want us to succeed.
They don't want us
They
to
don't
keep
want us
going.
to know.
They don't want us to evolve. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So because it's literally scary. Like, think about it. All trends, everything. Sorry.
Yes,
Hey,
go
at
on
me.
your-
It
yes.
comes from a black woman. You know what I'm saying?
At
So,
her.
you know what I'm saying? It comes from a black woman. So if
Period.
we, think that we've hit some pedestal where we can stop now and not continue to evolve, we're doing the world a disservice. So I
Period.
just want to see us to continue to evolve, continue to question ourselves, question the music we're listening to, question the everything that we do, our social norms, question all those things. Where is it coming from? What are we being influenced by? That independence, continue to be independent, free thinking person, as Aziza mentioned earlier, so that we can continue to grow and continue to grow our humankind.
Exactly. Like it's really about evolution.
Amen.
You know, and when you pay attention to how you continue to challenge your mental space, but also just that intelligence, right? Because you have your mental and you have your mind, but your mind is the seat of your soul, right? So when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I have my spirit, I have my soul, and I have my actual physical mental brain that needs exercise, because it's a physical thing. It needs exercise.
It's a muscle, right?
It's a muscle. So when you have these things working tandem, that's why your spirit will be like, ooh, go try that. Go do this. I need to exercise it.
Yeah.
Start thinking. Now, of course, you want to keep them in a balance, keep it in a nice space, which is why I suggest curating your intelligence, curating what you're bringing in. Be intentional about those experiences. Like Arata said, have those experiences, but be intentional about it, because like we said, rites of passage a lot of times in societies will show you how you'll behave like 10 years later.
Yep.
You feel me?
And like you just said, that's all rites of passage are, is like intentional education.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Intentional education.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bringing
Exactly.
reverence to a moment of change.
Exactly.
Exactly. So
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because there is definitely a different type of emphasis that is put on different ethnic groups, different women in different ethnic groups on different forms of education. So historically speaking, and the class that you're in as well.
That's true.
The class of women. So, of course, we know that women who were of a higher class, and historically speaking, would be given a lot of artistic education. They would learn piano. They would learn some form of instrument. They would learn a foreign language or a few
Right, because
foreign
why is that so
languages.
important?
They would
Right.
learn poetry and prose and things of this nature that were deemed important, of course, to be interesting to a man and therefore marrying you off. But ultimately, so that you could teach your children these things, so that they still had the understanding that ultimately these things were something that were of importance and that should be passed on to the next generation.
Because that's what makes you wealthy, rich.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Having these experiences, being well versed culturally is what makes you have a rich
character.
existence, not even not even monetarily, but just a rich existence. And being a well-rounded individual.
Right.
So yes, the men were more so educated on the finance and the business aspects of things. The women
And the groundwork.
and the groundwork, right? Exactly, the physical things of that nature.
Probably in their gender roles.
Yeah, for sure. Gender roles had a huge role in that, which is why it's important for us to now be intentional about all of the forms of education that are out there and that are necessary.
Because at the same time, if a woman, was coming from a family where, she had the opportunity to have higher education still, right? There still is a balance. Like, for example, women will always used to say, if you go to college and you know you want to be married, go to college and you'll probably meet your husband.
Right.
Go to places and have conversations. Be able to actually engage.
Make sure you go to the right college, ladies.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No.
Put it out there because it's true.
And be in the right circles.
Be in the right circles.
Be in the right spaces. Have the right conversations.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
that people want to spend more time with you.
And if you want a man who is more like physically or spiritually centered, go take yoga classes.
Right.
Meet your man at a yoga studio or something of that nature.
Or if you're, religious, church, mosque,
right,
wherever
church,
place.
Right, or
exactly.
a farmer's market. There are different places depending on the character that you want or the characteristics that you want to show up in your partner.
It all has to do with that little saying that we say now. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Right?
And if you don't know, try different things. Like educate yourself on different things, okay, so like since high school, you guys know I've done like hair and makeup. Period. And those have been a skill that could like carry me forever. Like, I never really wanted to be a hairstylist, never really wanted to be a makeup artist, but anytime I don't have any, if I need it, I can always fall back on it. Aziza, she's an artist. She can always fall back on it. Arata, she's everything. So, like we all have things like, you don't just want to be able to rely on like your Western education or, because you also want to have skills that can carry you as well, just in case you never know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. It is. And then to the point of you saying, if you know, you know, also if you know, you don't know.
Right.
The man that knows something knows that he knows nothing at all. Our dear Auntie Erica said that. Erica Badu, get into it. And so ultimately, that's also something I learned in high school in the theory of knowledge, which was a class that really just helped me understand that the more you learn, shout out to International Baccalaureate, gang, gang. The more you learn, the more you realize that there is to learn. Right. And ultimately, you will never know everything. So that was actually a huge weight off my shoulders because as a teenager, of course, you believe that you know everything. And then once you have gone to college, you really know everything.
Right.
But then when I got to college, I felt like I was getting slightly dumber.
For real.
What's happening here? This is not why I paid all this money.
I thought I knew.
I'm so confused. I thought I knew and now I know nothing. Right. Oh, man. And so, yeah, definitely just understanding the balance there. And I think that will also drive you to continue to have the passion and the desire to know more and to learn and constantly ask questions. Right. Never be afraid to ask questions. Never think that you know too much to ask a question, and don't be afraid to be wrong either, ultimately, because it's not about right or wrong. It's about, are you learning or not? And are you progressing or not? And if you think you know everything, then you're probably not going to progress. You're probably not going to learn anything. You're not going to be open to new experiences. You're not going to be open to learning, educating yourself, and being shown the blind spots, because there's a whole area in your life that you don't know that you don't even
landmark.
Yes, just dropping all of these little gems. But yeah, like there are definitely blind spots there that you have to be able to be open to seeing. Right. And the only way you can be open to that is having people around you who you can trust, who you know care about you.
I learned so much from these two girls, and I'm sure it's vice versa.
Period. Like your environment, being intentional about the people that you're around, knowing that they are of like minds and that they will see, there's something that you don't know, and you can't see it, and I'm gonna show you, and you gonna trust me because you know that I'm in your life for a reason, And so ultimately, just stay open, y'all.
And be authentic as well, because in your knowledge search, as long as you're authentic to yourself, you'll be led to what is for you to know and for you to have and the skills you're meant to develop. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be authentic. We're not telling you to go do yoga for the spiritual guide just because,
or it do it just because. I don't, I think sometimes you should do it just because.
Really?
Yeah, no, literally. I think that's how you might know that, you just might not even know, like, wow, that's, because I think if you have the thought to say, okay, I'm going to go to a yoga class, that's your because.
Yeah, I'm saying don't do it because I told you to.
Or do it
because she told you to, because it's something that's productive. Like, I'm not going to say, certain things I think maybe, but something like yoga, anything that you feel like is a higher vibrational thing. Yeah, maybe you don't got to try crack.
Yes.
Because
she is right. Go to a yoga class.
Yeah, like there's not, but sometimes it can be a little intimidating. Like I find it a lot, like if you don't fit into that space or you're not the, the bead wearer or the crystal holder that you shouldn't involve yourself in certain spaces. No, any space can be a space for you, if that's what you want to make it about. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be one definition of something. Real. I learned a lot of that through traveling. Like it's okay to be the outlier. It's okay to be the standout in a situation, because just like you're learning from them, they're learning from you. It's so much that you being real, that different person in a space can teach everyone around you. They might want to go to the hip hop dance class, but they don't feel like they're going to be accepted there. But you coming into their space might make them feel open to coming to another space. And that's how we all learn more.
Be okay with getting out of your comfort zone.
See how I just learned from Chi?
Yes, exactly. No, but seriously, be okay with getting out of your comfort zones. Be okay with, like you said, being uncomfortable and just being that outlier.
That's how you grow.
Because that is how they did it historically, right? Yeah. They were in spaces, these historical women that we're even talking about today, or all month, for example, they were in spaces that really people said, y'all didn't belong here. You're not supposed to be here. And because of them doing that, it really, allows us to have our freedom now. Yeah, shout out to Giwa and Mata.
Yes, we are trailblazers.
That's so real. Because I remember when I was little, and I know, girl, people say that to me all the time.
Not in a gang, you guys, I swear.
What? But yeah, be a trailblazer, be an explorer.
Yeah, be a trailblazer for sure.
Yes. And ultimately, the best way to do that is through educating yourself, woman.
Holistically.
Period. Do not be so self-assured that you think that one form of education is better than the other.
Yes.
Because ultimately, you are simply stifling yourself.
Yes, we need everybody.
Yeah, be like those before you and really just expand yourself. Allow yourself to go and break through those glass ceilings and walls and doors and all that stuff. It's for you if you want it.
Yeah, man. Yes. So I think we articulated that like some educated women. I don't know. So silly. I hope you all feel educated at the end of this episode. Okay. I'm freaking hilarious. Anyway, we did not do.
It must be the pregnancy. The pregnancy got
no, it's
so goofy.
I'm very
she's
funny.
So goofy today.
It's really funny.
She's really connecting to her inner child.
Her inner child is coming out.
I just feel like they know that I'm crazy. And
we're in public.
She said to do.
I mean, I just feel like
I'm dropping the headphones because I can't anymore.
This is just such a elevated conversation that we have to lighten it up just a little bit.
No, for real. And hang out with kids. Kids will teach you so much,
oh my
too.
God.
Youth them will teach you. If you really want to know what you know, go around some children. And children will ask you, they'll ask you to like bring out like the most, how do you say it? Like, innocent truth of things.
Yeah. No, for real.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Because they're not convoluted.
But yeah, something funny. My nephew told me Koto. It was so funny. We were like arguing one time, and he was like, "You think you're perfect? You're not perfect. You're two different people. I see you on social media with that positive attitude." I'm like, what? He checked me, you guys. He called me out. He was like, doing your pretty stuff? He was like, what about right now? I'm like, yo.
Because y'all were arguing and you showed her that other side.
It's like, you're real ugly to me right now.
No, it was so funny. Whoa. So little kids will definitely tell you how it is.
That has been another episode of Lotus Tea Talks, where we have these fabulous conversations.
Yes.
I hope you all have enjoyed sipping with us. And before we leave, we have a petal of inspiration to leave you with. And that is, to educate a woman is to educate an entire generation. Period.
Yes, point blank. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a beautiful day. And we look forward to seeing you all next time.
Bye.